Sometimes in life we're lost, we're insecure, and we don't know where to go. And then it's very tempting to ask other people for help, to ask other people for guidance and for direction. But here's where you have to be careful. In life, you should generally go by the rule that you should only compare yourself to yourself or who you were yesterday and not to other people. Because every time that somebody else gives you any kind of advice, just know that it is always shaped by their individual experience. And especially if their experience is an experience that you don't want for yourself, you should not be taking advice from them because no one really has the same biology as you, the same intellect as you, the same history as you. And just taking their blueprint to life, taking their belief system and applying it to your life will most of the time cause more damage to your life than it will do you any good. Even if you feel like your belief system and your way of orienting yourself in your life is completely off right now. Your compass might need some calibration and you might have to go into yourself again and think about what to do. But that is always better than kind of reaching out for somebody else's hand in times of need and in times of feeling lost. I'm not saying to never take advice from somebody else. That is also not right. That is also not the truth. We also need input from others. But what I really would strongly advise you to do is not to seek advice out of desperation and to always consider whom you're taking advice from and to not take advice from people whom you don't want to be like. So, even the people who genuinely want to help you with their advice and not want to manipulate you, because this is also something that occurs quite regularly, people wanting to influence you, influence your decisions. And people can sense when you're lost, people can sense when you're confused. And there are plenty of people who want to and who will take advantage of that. This is what you have to be aware of, first of all. And second of all, even the people who don't want to manipulate you, who don't want to influence you in a negative way, they still are very much driven by their own perception of the world. And they will give you a very biased view. They will give you biased advice. So humans learn behaviors, beliefs, and even emotions by observing other people, observing and imitating others. This is how we start learning behaviors when we're very young. And if you model yourself after someone whose life you don't really admire, who's just there right now giving you advice, helping you, being there for you, but whose life you don't really want, then you're more likely to internalize their patterns. And this could literally be anything. This could be their patterns of thinking, this could be their patterns of living, their habits, everything. There's a thing called emotional contagion, and this basically means that if you're surrounding yourself with negative or unaligned influences, you can literally prime your brain to think and act like them. So you might think that it won't hurt to hang out with people whom you actually know are not really on your level anymore, maybe old friends or people that you've kind of outgrown. It could even be your family. If your family is very toxic and you think, okay, it won't hurt to be with them for a while and to listen to their thoughts about my situation. No, it will. We as human beings, we're so influenced by others, and it's arrogant to think that we're not, that we're so stoic. We are really very neuroplastic. And this is a great strength. So we can be influenced and we can learn and change our beliefs and change our perceptions of the world. But this can go both ways. This can influence you in a positive way and it can also influence you in a negative way. And if you expose yourself to people whom you know are not really on your level or on your lane anymore, this is where you will start to suffer. There's a study that I really love and that I really quote a lot when it comes to how much environment can actually influence you. And it was actually conducted in the 70s by a psychologist called Bruce K. Alexander. And he basically put rats in a cage, and there were two cages. So basically, in one cage, there was nothing in that cage except sweetened morphine water and normal water. And in that cage, the rat pretty much immediately got addicted to the morphine water. It would choose the morphine water because it was isolated, because there was nothing in this cage and it was bored. when the rat was put in another cage where there were also other rats, where there was other stuff to do, there were like wheels and things to climb on, the rat would not get addicted to the morphine water as easily. The isolated rats overwhelmingly chose the morphine solution, even to the point of overdosing, so they literally died in that cage. Whereas the rat in the more entertaining cage, it would prefer the regular water and engaged in normal healthy behavior. So this influence that the environment has over you, it is not just the case for these rats. You can actually use this and transfer it to social contexts. So when it comes to how much people influence you, there's actually this thing called the ripple effect. And the ripple effect shows that we are greatly impacted through our social networks by our friends and family. And basically, if your friend becomes obese, your odds of becoming obese increase significantly, even if you're not directly connected to this person. And it's similar with trust and similar with happiness, voting behaviors, health habits, and this can really cascade through social ties. So you don't even have to be directly connected to the person. You could just be in the same friend circle and could be influenced by this other person. In uncertain situations, this also shows a lot. So, if we're not very sure about what we're going to do in a situation because we're kind of overwhelmed by it, we're usually looking for something that is called social proof. And basically, this means that we imitate what others do or seem to approve of, especially when we're not sure what is the right path to take. So, there were some experiments conducted by Ash, and he basically showed that around 40% of people will rather align with what a group chose as an answer as what they believe to be true. So basically, they had to say um, which stick was shorter or longer, and it was very evident. But the group said that it was the other stick that was longer, the actual one. And people, even though it was quite obvious in plain sight that that was the shorter stick, they went with the other option because the group that it was, of course, instructed to say the wrong thing because they said this stick was longer. So this is basically what we do. Especially under social pressure, we tend to go with the group's decision, although we don't believe that that is what is right. So we're conforming to what the group says, even though we know exactly that that is not the right choice. This just underscores how our behavior, sometimes even against our own judgment, is shaped by what we perceive as majority. So behaviors can spread through groups. And this is exactly what happens when you take advice from people or when you spend time with people that you don't want to be liked. You adapt what to their opinions, and you adapt to their behaviors, and you adapt to their patterns. And especially if you're unsure about your own goals and about your own opinions, this can lead to you abandoning them, forgetting about them, and kind of completely focusing on what these other people, what your social group says, or what this person that you listen to said. So, mentors or role models, they don't just shape your skills, they also shape your belief in your ability to succeed. And this is where it becomes really important because no matter how intelligent you are, no matter how motivated you are, if your belief in your ability to succeed is sabotaged by somebody else, say, let's say a parent who constantly tells you that you can't do the thing that you want to do, you basically set yourself up for failure because belief influences action, which influences results, which in turn influence beliefs. And if you keep exposing yourself to people who tell you that you can do less than you actually think that you can do, this will send you into a downward spiral. So when you take advice from people who tell you to be realistic, they might mean well, but in the end, they will end up hurting you through that. At the end of the day, you might really just end up living someone else's limiting belief, which is something that you don't want to do. So please remember that advice always carries the world view of the advice giver. And if their worldview is fear-driven, if it's limited or misaligned, which quite frankly, a lot of worldviews are this way, then internalizing it can weaken your intrinsic motivation and distort your sense of identity. So you really have to be careful with this. So ask yourself the next time if someone gives you advice, do I want to live the way that they live before taking that advice? And if you want to seek for mentors, especially if you feel lost in life, look for people who embody the habits, the mindset, and the values that you want for yourself. Look for people who really represent as a whole the person that you want to be. And even good advice can be harmful if it comes from someone with a life that you don't want to replicate. So what is important here is you have to build self-trust, become aware of your own values so that you're not as easily influenced by others. The more you cultivate self-compassion and awareness, the less dependent you become on external validation and external advice. So yeah, I hope you guys could take something from this video, and I see you guys in the next video.